friends, it's Elizabeth Morse from Simply Out of the Box, and today we are going to make two things. I've got a package of pork chops that I grabbed at the grocery store, and it has five pork chops in it. My family only needs 4, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a great and simple baked pork chop recipe. It's kind of foolproof, really delicious and easy. And then with that the extra chop and some remnant bacon that I have, I'm going to show you how to make a second meal, which is pork and beans, kind of everybody's favorite. And these, as usual, are things that you should have in your pantry, all the ingredients needed. And I'll kind of turn my camera around so you can see what we need for both things, and we'll get started. So for this first dish, as I showed you, I've got a package here of pork chops. These are pretty thin, and depending on the thickness of your pork chops, these guys are about 1/2 inch. You're gonna actually cook them for 7 minutes per 1/2 inch of chop. So if you get a thicker chop, you do want to pay attention to how thick they are, and you can judge your cooking time accordingly. But mine are pretty thin, and that's fine for what we're going to do. I've got a cast iron skillet. You can use whatever you want, but the idea is that you're going to put the pork chops in, and they're going to be kind of close together so that they remain juicy and don't get dried out. So you don't want to put something, just a small amount of pork chops in a huge pan. Just try to get something that keeps them snug. And then we've got some spices. We've got oregano, garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, salt and pepper, and then a little bit of olive oil. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna simply create a little spice rub in this dish. Then we're gonna drizzle a little bit of oil in the pan, a little bit of oil on the chops, and just coat them in the seasoning. We're gonna stick those guys in the oven at 400 degrees. These will probably just take 7 minutes, like I said, 7 minutes per 1/2 inch. So we'll check them at 7 minutes. They may need to go a smidge longer. Looks like one might be a little bit thicker. And then with our extra chop, while the others are cooking, we are going to chop that up, and I will show you what we're gonna do to make pork and beans. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're gonna take some olive oil in our skillet. We're just gonna drizzle a little bit. This is a total of 2 tablespoons. So about a tablespoon in the pan, and then the other tablespoon we're gonna put on the chops. So I've got that going. I've got my little bowl here, and we are gonna do, let's see, we'll start with the paprika. We're gonna do a tablespoon of paprika. A teaspoon of paprika. Gosh, that's a big difference. Teaspoon of paprika. The kind that I have happens to be a smoked paprika. You can just use regular. That's what I've got. So we'll put that in our little bowl here. Then we're going to do 2 teaspoons each of garlic powder and onion powder. So this is going to have a ton of flavor. That's garlic powder. Now I've got my onion powder here. We're going to do a teaspoon each of salt and pepper. Here's my salt. And pepper. All right. Oh, I've got a bunch of pepper everywhere. And then we're going to stir that up. So there's not much to it at all. I really like this seasoning. It's just really flavorful. Some lumps of paprika there. Okay, so there we go. I opened up my pork chops, and I'm going to just drizzle right in the package. And just on those 4 that I'm cooking, because remember I'm saving one for my pork and beans, I'm going to put a generous spoonful on each chop. As you can see, rub that in. This is super easy. If a little bit gets on that extra chop, it's not the worst thing in the world because it'll be really nicely seasoned. So they look like this. I'm gonna put those seasoned side down in my pan. Remember keeping them close together so that they stay nice and moist. And then sprinkle the other little bit of olive oil. You could use whatever oil you like. You could even use a little butter, but I like olive oil. And then we're gonna take the rest of this and just sprinkle like we did on the other side. Rub that in. Ooh, they really smell tasty. Okay, so this is how they look. You'll see that they're close together. I'm gonna pop those in a preheated 400-degree oven for about 7 minutes, and I'll come back and show you what we're gonna do with the last bit of pork and some old bacon, not old bacon, but some remnant bacon that I've got and some canned goods, and turn this into a whole second meal for your family. Okay, so the chops are in the oven, and now I'm going to show you the ingredients that we're going to use to make our pork and beans. This is a really pretty traditional recipe, but a great way to use up just a little bit of, you know, maybe some extra pork that you have lying around, or maybe you just really like pork and beans and you want to start the process by purchasing some things. But I've got leftovers, so that's what I'm going to do. And let me turn my camera around and I will show you what things we're going to need to use for this recipe. Okay, so here's my last chop that I've got, and there's a little bit of seasoning there. That's no big deal. I've got some slab bacon that was in my freezer, and I'm gonna use that. I've got Worcestershire sauce, 3 cans of cannellini beans. You could also use navy beans, but that's what I've got. Some dry mustard, tomato sauce, cider vinegar, and golden molasses. You can use whatever molasses you want. You could even use corn syrup. Oh, and an onion. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna chop up the onion and add that to this. So I have it's really grungy looking, but it's clean, I promise. I have a really old stove, and my slow cooker actually is built into my stove. This is the pot that goes in it. So I'm gonna put everything in, and but you could use a crock pot. You could even cook it really low on the stove. This is just what I've got, so slow cooker it is. And I'm gonna add the onions and the pork. I don't need to add really any oil, and that should be fine because there's enough fat in the bacon and in this pork chop that that'll be enough to saute the onions. And then we're gonna add everything else and then let it go. So couldn't be simpler. Just 1 second, I'll turn my camera back around so you can see what I'm doing, and we'll get this loaded and ready to go. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and use this whole onion. I have a white onion. You could use yellow or red, whatever you've got on hand. But I've got a white onion. Get rid of that trash. And I'm just gonna do kind of a medium dice. It doesn't have to be fancy. And gosh, these are such tasty beans. I like to make these in the summer with a cookout, but it's great, you know, just to have as a meal too. So here we go. It'd be really good with maybe a simple cornbread recipe and an easy weeknight dinner. Ooh, this one's a little bit slippery. Okay, so I'm gonna get these out of the way, right into my pot. And then this guy. This really just takes no time at all either, which is kind of nice. You can also make this recipe and then reheat it a day or so later, you know, if you've refrigerated it, and take some of the pressure off during the week. You have dinner ready to go. Okay, so I'm gonna take this pork chop, and again, I'm just gonna cut it up into small bites. The pork is gonna do a nice job of flavoring the beans. Really tasty. Okay. So you can see, just kind of a rough chop. Oops. All right, let's get this in, and then I'll come back and chop up that bacon for you. Okay, so this piece of bacon is actually, even though it's just slab bacon, it's a little bigger than I would have normally used, but this is just going to be really hearty and flavorful for us. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those chunks of pork in, throw them in there. Could use an old ham hock, a soup bone. Oops, there's our timer. Hey Alexa, cancel timer. Let's take a look at our chops. Gosh, see how fast that went? We finished cutting this guy up, and then we'll go over and take a look and see where we're at. All right, our chops are out, and we want to let those rest for 5 minutes. That lets them, the juices from cooking, redistribute through the meat and keeps them really nice and juicy for us. And that'll be about the perfect amount of time to finish this recipe up and get it in the slow cooker. And we can plate up those chops. You can see how they look. And then I'll come back and show you what the pork and beans look like when they're done. All right. So the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna put this bad boy on the heat for a little bit and get our other ingredients together. I'm just gonna saute the onions because I like them soft. You could really just put them all in the slow cooker like they are, but I like to get them a little browned up, a little soft, and then add the other ingredients. So we'll get these on the stove and I'll come back and show you the other things and we'll be ready to go. Okay, this is about 7.5 minutes. These pork chops look fantastic. They smell amazing, super fast. And then I'm gonna just show you what is going on over here in my pot. This is the bacon, the other pork chop, and the onions. Those are just sauteing. And then, as soon as they're done, which is gonna be about another minute, that's just to my liking. Again, if you're using a crock pot, just pitch everything in, it'll be fine. But this is how I like to do it. This is my slow cooker back here. And as soon as these are done, we'll put that in there. And whether you're using a crock pot or old school like me, you're gonna want them to go for about 4 hours on low. And they'll be perfect. Very delicious, very tender. It smells real good. As you can see, the bacon's rendering out some. And I'll come back, we'll add the other things, pop them in the slow cooker, and I'll come back and show you the finished product. Okay, so the next thing that we're gonna add, I've got 3 cans, I've already opened them, of cannellini beans. I did not drain them. We're gonna dump these guys in. Could use navy beans if you prefer. This is what I like. I'm going to put a teaspoon of salt. Not too much because canned things tend to have a lot of salt already in them. We're going to do a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce. A little of that guy goes a long way. We're going to do 3 tablespoons of cider vinegar. Dry mustard, 1.5 teaspoons of dry mustard. This is a 1/2 teaspoon, so I'm going to use 3 of these. A 1/2 cup of tomato sauce. Again, I just used a can. You could use whatever you like, or even some crushed tomatoes would be good. We're going to do a teaspoon, I'm sorry, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. And then, this is what makes it so yummy and delicious. We're gonna do about 1/3 cup of molasses. I happen to have this enormous jar of molasses, but, and I'm also just gonna eyeball it, because I'm comfortable doing that. But again, 1/3 cup. We're gonna stir it all up. I'll show you what it looks like before it goes in. And then in the slow cooker on low for 4 hours. It smells amazing. And these are going to be about 1,000,000 times better than the kind that you get at the store in a can. All right, I'm grabbing the camera. I'm showing you what it looks like. Looks a little messy right now, but it's going to be amazing. So stay tuned. I'll come back and show you what it looks like. And gosh, I wish you could smell it. It smells amazing.